according to St. Matthew, the 11th chapter, beginning of verse 2. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered, "Go and tell John what you see and hear. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, and the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me." As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. "What did you go out in the wilderness to look at? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare the way, your way, before you.' Truly I tell you, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist. Yet the least of the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thank you, God. Let us pray. Lord, open our hearts and our minds that we may hear with joy your word for us this day. And as we hear it, let it plant seed that will grow and bear fruit in our hearts, in our lives, in this church and beyond, now and forevermore. Amen. In 1969, my middle sister Sarah, I had 5 of them, got married in Arlington Chapel, Arlington, Virginia. Her husband, her fiance, became her husband, was stationed at Fort Myer there, and they got married in the military chapel. My father had a heart attack after my sister's wedding and ended up in the hospital in Fairfax, Virginia. The doctor said to us after a couple of weeks of recovery that if we wanted to drive Daddy home, we were going to have to wait 4 to 6 more weeks, but if we wanted to fly him home, we could fly him home in 3 days. So we made arrangements for Daddy to fly from National Airport in Washington, D.C. to Fayetteville, Greenwich Field in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on what was then called Piedmont Airlines. Some of you may remember Piedmont. Well, the day came, and we rolled Daddy into the VIP lounge there at National Airport, had a nurse with him, and my sister that had got married, her and her husband were there. And as they were waiting, a group of men, a small group of men, 4 or 5, came into the VIP lounge. One of those men saw my dad sitting there in a wheelchair, and he said, "Say, sport, how you doing?" And my dad said, "Well, better now. I had a heart attack and get ready to fly home to North Carolina." And they chatted for just a few minutes, a couple of minutes, not long. When the group of men left to go to their plane, this man was tall and he was bald-headed. And after they walked out of the room, my dad looked up at my sister and said, "I wonder who that nice man was, Sarah." And she leaned down and said, "Daddy, that man was John Wayne." He didn't look like my dad pictured the Duke, because he didn't have his toupee on. Recognition. Some people just don't look like they should look to us. Some people we don't recognize yet, because we don't have a frame of reference for them. We don't know how to picture them. There was a boy that was like me, that loved Steve McQueen when he was a big actor of television and movies. And him and his dad were eating at a restaurant in California, and lo and behold, sitting across the way was Steve McQueen and some friends. And the little boy said, "Daddy, I want to get his autograph." He said, "Son, don't bother him. He's a big star. He won't." He said, "Daddy, let me just try." So he went over with a piece of paper and a pen. He said, "Mr. McQueen, you're my favorite actor. Can I have your autograph?" He said, "Well, sure." He loved children, by the way. He signed the autograph. He said, "Say, son." He said, "See that man sitting at that table over there?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Go tell him I said my autograph's worth 2 of his." He said, "Okay." So he went over to the table. He said, "Mister, I don't know who you are, but Mr. McQueen said his autograph is worth 2 of yours." And the man smiled and said, "Did he really say that?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Okay." He took the pen and wrote Burt Reynolds twice. Recognition. We don't see what's right in front of us, what's right beside of us, what's very near to us. Because things just don't look like we think they should look. Take John the Baptizer, for example. John's in prison now. Herod's locked him up because he's preaching against Herod Antipas for marrying his brother's wife. And he's in the dungeon, and he hears about the things going on out there with Jesus. Now, you've got to know that this cousin of Jesus, who was a prophet who hung around out there wearing camel skin and a leather belt around him and dipping locusts in honey and eating them, didn't look like a prophet was supposed to look. And Jesus isn't doing what they thought a Messiah would do either. And so he sends his disciples to ask, are you the one, or is there yet another one? Sometimes I wonder if that was really John's question, or was that John's disciples' question. But we don't know. It doesn't matter. They asked it anyway, and Jesus said, go back and tell John what you see and hear. Blind are seeing, deaf are hearing, the mutes are talking, the lame are dancing, and the dead are being raised to life, and the good news is being preached to the poor. All of those were the signs of the Messiah, what he would do, according to the prophets. Go back and read Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Micah, all of them. You'll see. And so they went back to report this. And when they left, he turned to the rest of them and said, what did you think you would see when you went to see John out there at Jordan? You weren't expecting to see a wild man wearing camel skin and a leather belt out there calling you to repentance. But let me tell you something. He was a prophet. Oh, he was more than a prophet. He was the very messenger of God preparing the way for the Messiah. He just didn't look like you thought a prophet. Oh, look. Recognition. In these dark days of Advent, how do you and I prepare our hearts and our minds so that we're going to be able to see him, recognize him, this Messiah who comes? Well, there's several things you have to do. First, you have to look for him in the normal routines of life. This Jesus shows up in the normal routines. After all, when he was born in Bethlehem, it was a normal night, normal routines, normal things going on. Nothing extraordinary happening there except the birth of that child. But in the normal routines of life, in the everyday mundane things, he can show up. And if we're not looking, if we haven't oriented ourselves to expect to see him in the normal places, we're going to miss it. We're going to miss it. Some years back, I'm not exactly sure what year it was, Mark Lowry, the gospel singer, wrote and recorded a song that's now become a Christmas classic called Mary, Did You Know? If you never read the lyrics or listened to them of that song, I encourage you to do that because it's very powerful lyrics in it. One of the lines in there that really grips me is when he says, Mary, did you know that when you kissed your baby boy, you kissed the face of God? In the normal things, baby. Nobody expects to see God in the normal places. And yet he shows up in the normal places. June the 30th, 1982, we had our son. Barbara gave birth to our son, Larry. As we were in the delivery room in Old Central Carolina Hospital in Sanford there, and by the way, they were real strict back then. They had an X I had to stand on. I couldn't move. And old Dr. K. Covington, one of those old school, old-timey doctors that everybody loved, but Dr. Covington held up our son, covered in mucus and blood by the legs. This is what he said to us. Behold, a miracle from God. The last place I thought God was going to show up was in a delivery room. But there he shows up in the normal routines of life. And if only we are ready to see, if we open our hearts and our minds for the possibility that he shows up in those places. There's a great Flemish artist named Peter Bruegel. Has a number of wonderful paintings. One of my favorites, and you can go online, if you've got a computer, go online and look him up. Peter Bruegel, Flemish artist, that's B-R-U-E-G-H-E-L. Numbering, I think it's called Numbering at Bethlehem or Census at Bethlehem. Either way, you'll find a picture. It's a picture of a Flemish village, an ordinary Flemish village. When you first look at it, kids out there playing on the ice, skating on the ice. It's wintertime, of course. And there's a butcher over there butchering his wares to sell, and a maker over there with his wood to sell to people. All kinds of everyday business going on. And when you look close at the bottom of that painting, you see a pregnant woman on a donkey being led by a man. In the normal routines of life, he shows up. And only if we have the eyes to see, the ears, the imagination, open our mind, are we going to recognize him. We first look in the normal routine. Secondly, we have to be able to look in the faces around us. Because this God shows up, this Messiah, in the faces of people around us. The face of a child, the face of a needy person in pain, the face of an elderly person, the face of somebody who's filled with doubt or longing or hungry or afraid or joyful or excited. So many different ways he can show up in faces of the people around us. Whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. That means he's there in those faces when we look to see. Martha Ray was a comedian and an actress, very popular in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. Martha Ray went on a USO tour to Vietnam with Bob Hope. While she was there visiting a field hospital, they were bringing in wounded. There was a battle going on, and they were short-handed. They had a couple of doctors, some corpsmen, and a few nurses, and Martha Ray went to work tending to wounded American soldiers. These were special operations Green Berets. Because of her willingness to do that, in the midst of what was happening in a dangerous area, by the way, they were under attack even in that area. The U.S. Army awarded her and made her an honorary lieutenant colonel in the Special Forces. They gave her a Green Beret. And as a result of her efforts and work, the United States military, through the Pentagon, rendered a decision that she could be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. A great honor for having not been in the military or served any other way, but to be given that because of her service. But you know what Martha Ray did? She refused the privilege of being buried at Arlington National Cemetery. You know where Martha Ray is buried? Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the Special Forces Cemetery there. And 8 Green Berets carried her to her grave. She loved them. They were her boys, she called them. When they looked up from a hospital bed in a field hospital in Vietnam, they saw the face of a comedian, a woman, but they saw more than that. They saw the face of the love of God right there with them in the midst of their fear, their battle, their death and dying, the stink and the ugliness of it all. Because when you look in the faces, when you look in the faces, that's where it so often shows up. That there was a doctor who every year they had a missionary come to their church and give a presentation. He would always give money. He loved the idea of missions and he wanted to support it. But one day, as the missionary was talking, he heard a voice. Why don't you go? You're a doctor. Why don't you go? And something just grabbed hold of him. And so he made arrangements, volunteered to go, got the time off, got his appointments all rescheduled and delayed so he could take that week and go. And they told him they had everything ready and they sent him. To his horror, when he arrived in a village with a medical clinic that was anything but clean and sterile. And these were dirty and sick people, lots and lots of health issues there, diseases, things he'd never encountered before. It didn't dawn on him until about middle of that week that he had scheduled to be gone on his missionary trip during his anniversary. Day after day he attended these folks. Some of them had diseases that ate away their fingers, so he wrote notes for them, wrote letters. It was not uncommon. Well, on Thursday night, he was sitting down to write a letter to his wife, asking her forgiveness for missing their anniversary, and saying to her, I must have made a terrible mistake. I cannot believe that I volunteered to come to this kind of filth in this kind of place. When one of his patients came to the little room where he was in the clinic and said, I need you to write me a letter. Can you do that for me? And he said, yes, I'll do it. So she came in and sat down and he took the paper and the pen. He said, who is it to? And she said, write this letter to Catherine. Well, that was his wife's name. He thought, that's fine. Maybe she has a friend named Catherine. So he started to write, Dear Catherine, and this is what she said. We want to thank you for sharing your husband with us this week. Nobody cares about us. We're not loved. We're not cared for. But he has come from a safe, clean place to this dirty village to tend to our wounds, to take care of our disease. He has come to love us. We have seen the Lord in his face. He couldn't finish writing the letter, the tears falling on the page. Finally did, and mailed it to his wife. And she would later say it was among her most treasured possessions. In the faces, if only we look, we can see it. In the normal routines of life, in the faces of those around us. But also, we can see him, if we're willing to look, in the unexpected, unplanned time. Those shepherds on the hillside, as we saw in the video in Sunday school this morning, they weren't expecting that. It was unexpected. When the angels opened up heaven, You know, there's an old prophecy. Isaiah said, "Oh, that God would rend the heavens." They probably recited that and prayed that, but he didn't expect it to happen. But on that night, the heavens were torn open, and the angels appeared and sang in the unexpected. How many times does he show up in the unexpected place, time, moment when we least expect it to happen? Nobody. But nobody would expect that. And yet, in the unexpected, there he is. Ways, places, times, events, moments we would expect it to happen. Barbara Robinson wrote a great book back in the 70s, a little book, it's on that list in the book with you, called The Best Little Christmas Pageant Ever. It's a story of a church that has a children's Christmas pageant every year. Well, this particular year, the lady who directed it fell and broke her leg, and so they had to have a volunteer take her place. And in the midst of that calamity, they had an even bigger one. There was a family that lived in town that had some children who were well known for being disruptive, troublemaking kids. They didn't have parenting, good parenting at home. The oldest of them was a girl named Imogene. They were called the Herdmans, the horrible Herdmans, they were called. And Imogene wormed her way in. Well, she basically extorted her way into playing Mary. She threatened the other girl that always played Mary. And she beat her up. She didn't let her play. So they acquiesced, and she got to be Mary. And they went through all the trauma of the rehearsal. And the whole town was abuzz. And everybody thought this was going to be not a children's pageant, but an ultimate nightmare. Night came for the production. She's up there. And as they come to that part where the child is born and they're laying him in the manger, Imogene would not lay the baby in the manger. She just held him and wept. Something happened in that moment that everybody in that church was moved. It was unexpected. They thought she'd throw the baby all across the room. Not weeping. Not experience the love of God in that moment. In the unexpected. In those places we wouldn't see it. That's how it shows up. In his book, The Case for Christmas, Lee Strobel, who was an atheist, by the way, before he became a devout believer, he was an atheist, and he was a writer for the Chicago newspaper. He was asked to do a story on the families in a tenement who were very poor, and he went to visit this one family, the Delgados, who had nothing. This lady was a single parent with 2 daughters. They had one sweater between them. One would wear it halfway to school and give it to the other one. He wrote a story about how impoverished. They didn't even have furniture. And so he wrote a story, and people responded. He went back to see them just before Christmas, and that apartment was full of stuff, all kinds of things. Coats, food, furniture. They didn't have room for everything, but when he got there, they were putting stuff in boxes and putting names on it. He said, "What are you doing?" And the mother said, "We cannot enjoy these things for Christmas when our neighbors have nothing." So they were sharing. He thought it was the strangest thing in the world. He would have kept it all, he said. But later, when he found the Lord and became a believer, he said, "I realized for the first time in my life, I saw what Christmas was all about." In that unexpected moment, in a tenement house, among a poor family, who finally had the ability to be able to share and wanted to so much. Oh, and the unexpected. In that little gift that may not have cost much, but means so much that we treasure. In that thought, that card, that handshake, that phone call, that visit. So many unexpected ways that the Messiah shows up in the lives of so many people. When you read the Gospels this time, read them again and look for all the ways that Jesus is unexpected in the lives of the people. And the things that he does, totally unexpected. Because that's how God works. That's how God works. And so in these days of Advent, we need to retune our hearts and our mind to look, to listen, to expect, finally, in the usual routines, mundanes of life, in the faces of those around us, and in the unexpected times. Be on alert, because maybe in that unexpected moment, maybe you're thinking, "Oh, this is not going to be," and all of a sudden, if you're tuned in, there it is. And you'll see it, even when you least expect it. The shepherds did on that hillside. They weren't expecting it. And yet there it was. And perhaps so many other people around us could not see, could not hear, could not experience. But if you and I are ready, we will. And remember, He can even show up as a newborn baby lying in a manger. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen.